episode is brought to you by A3, a CMMC cloud-based collaborative environment for an organization seeking certification, otherwise known as an OSC, to build CMMC packages and share with a marketplace of consultant RPOs and assessor C3PAOs. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of 123 CMMC. My name is Dana Mantilia, and I will be your host today. And our guest is Sai Khan from Strides Agency. Hello, Sai. How are you?
Hey, Dana. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Good. So thank you for joining us. And why don't you take a minute to tell everybody a little bit about you, a little bit about your company, what you do, and all that kind of fun stuff.
Absolutely. So my name is Sai Khan. I'm the founder and CEO of Strides Agency. My firm specializes in cybersecurity communications and marketing and go-to-market stuff. So I've spent a lot of time in driving awareness around cybersecurity to the larger defense industrial base. We work with primes, we work with large RPOs to develop awareness and understanding for cybersecurity and inspire companies to start taking action. They are required to follow DFAR 7012 today, NIST 80171 compliance. So there's already a lot of work to do, and we do a lot of communication and driving awareness on what the obligations are, and explain things in simple ways to regular users so they can get started and so on. So that's our core expertise. We've been doing it for a while now.
All right. Well, you are a hot commodity and going to become an even hotter commodity. So today we are going to talk about cybersecurity awareness in the DIB, right?
Yes.
So our first question is going to be, how do you get started in cybersecurity communications?
Oh, how did I get started?
Yeah.
I was working for a company, Exostar, when the DoD, really started going forward with CMMC, and I was sitting there at the Nexus watching it unfold, and I realized that it's the time where a new industry is about to get birth. From cybersecurity perspective, there are all these service providers who will then be connecting with the defense industrial base, and I saw my role there as a connector between these two entities. As a professional marketer, you're kind of like trained as an empath. Empathy is part of our job. And I could understand and see the challenges that the defense industry companies would run into. I could see what they need to do. And I just, jumped right into this. Initially, I just worked with the industry overall to assist with the communications. I helped create, I created the LinkedIn's largest group, maybe not the largest as of now, for CMMC, which enabled everybody else to come together and understand what the obligations are and what we need to accomplish. And then I've done a lot of projects and campaigns in driving awareness, as I mentioned, during this thing. So it kind of, I was there when this whole thing was starting, and I knew that, this was an opportunity for me to get involved and make a difference.
Yeah, perfect timing.
Yeah.
Great, perfect timing for you. I'm happy to hear that. Okay, so along your journey, so what are some common objections you run into with cybersecurity adoption?
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of my role is, to connect cybersecurity providers with DIB companies and encourage the DIB companies to start their cyber hygiene process, starting with ML1, with CMMC. So what are some of the things we run into from defense industrial base? I think when you run into small businesses, you're looking at a small business with about 20 employees. And if they're in manufacturing, they have been manufacturing for generations, at least 2 or 3 generations in there. So what we're doing here is we are first of all asking them to make a large purchase. This is a pretty significant investment for a lot of small businesses, especially if you're going with the NIST 80171 compliance. If you're doing basic cybersecurity, there's no investment there, and I absolutely encourage everybody to do their basic cyber hygiene right away. Should have already done it. But for the big stuff like NIST 80171, there's some dollar amount involved, and we estimate it can reach up to 6 figures for relatively larger companies in the small business sector. Between 20 to 50 employees, you could reach 100,000 expense. So we see that as a challenge. The second challenge I see is people not understanding what they're buying. So they can understand they have an obligation related to cybersecurity, but if you read through those controls, even if you try, it's just is beyond rocket science. In fact, I say rocket science is easier to understand than cybersecurity, because in rocket science, you're seeing a tube go up in the sky and you have a visual. Okay, there's gas coming out, and there's the thing going to Apollo 13 and to the moon. Mm-hmm. But with cyber, what do I have? Visually, I can only think of some bad guy in a hoodie and typing away at a dark screen. And that's not reality. I'm sure there are bad guys doing all sorts of stuff, not that part, but the reality is that cyber is about enabling MFA in your account, just Any place where you have O365, you're using M365, you have different QuickBooks, whatnot, all the web-based services you use, enable MFA, multi-factor authentication for all accounts. Know what you own, update all your devices. These are basic practices you set up to keep your house in order and secure. And I find that people don't connect the technical jargon with the basic stuff they need to do. And this is where, Dana, you're doing tremendous work. I mean, I applaud you for that. And I think we all need to carry that weight and explain to the consumers and to the end market, this is what you're buying. You're buying somebody to come to your house and tell you how to secure it, In a way, we have bought a big house, it has all these windows and doors, but nobody told us we were supposed to lock them at night or trim the hedges, because there are bad guys lurking all around. So we buy all this technology, we got it all, but we never got to the point of understanding how to secure it up. And unfortunately, technology is happening a lot faster than our ability to secure it. So as a result, bad guys are just ahead of us most of the times. So, you end up having a publication like Nisteran 171, which is a pretty dense and detailed cybersecurity framework to protect your organization. So.
And it's also, you think about the regular people, the non-technical people, these are the people that I always talk about and try to talk to, that, the IT people are trying to keep up with the bad guys, right? They're trying to keep up with the latest and the greatest and trying to block this and that. So meanwhile, while that's going on, we got the rest of us are just like wandering around, doing whatever on our computers, and that's not good. That's not helping. So you're absolutely right. It's got to be part of the whole overall, everybody needs to kind of, embrace this whole thing. So
absolutely.
I do wonder where like the black hoodie came from. Like, who's the one that decided that this is what we're going to look, this is what a hacker is going to look like. So
yeah, you search for stock images for hacking and you find that imagery, and that's how it gets used. Movies, what are some of the famous hacking movies was the hackers, and there were a couple others from the 80s. But we really haven't had an honest treatment of hacking in culture at large to show us what happens when a ransomware strikes. I don't want to know the hoodie part. I want to know the people part. What happened to the people afterwards? Did people get paid? Well, their accounting system is tied up with ransomware now. Are they doing any work? No, they can't. Does the company have the money to pay for the ransom? Probably not. Alrighty, big problem. So I would love to see that in movies.
That's a very good idea, because people, number one, they remember stories. It helps them, see a situation. So putting something together like that is probably a good idea. Maybe I should work on something like that.
I know. I'm all game. I'm actually talking to a writer and trying to see if we can team up and try to convince Hollywood to produce a movie that is, I think of it as The Hunt for Red October, but for cybersecurity. So The Hunt for Red October didn't bore you to death with technology of submarines, right? But it got you curious enough. They're like, okay, there's a silent propulsion in these things, apparently. So, I mean, that's all we may need to get everybody riled up and rallied behind these important things.
Yeah, and maybe we always talk about public service announcements. Remember when we used to watch them on TV and have public service announcements? Maybe we need to start doing some cyber public service announcements.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you would be great for that, Dana.
Oh, thanks. All right, back on track here. So here's our next question. So what are some successful traits that you've seen in the DIB companies that are effective at cybersecurity?
I see, yeah. So I look at companies, there's a very famous DIB organization in the CMMC ecosystem, WinTech, and their president is Alison Giddens. She's a great example of somebody I quote as a DIB organization that has taken itself from zero to the highest level, they say, from 171 compliance. So when I look at that and I look at other companies like those, the first thing that I see is that the founders and the CEOs and the exec team have an interest in this. So they develop interest in this. Why? Because it is a necessary compliance requirement. And if you're handling CUI, FCI, you have different levels of obligations when it comes to cybersecurity. So it's not optional, and I see that the execs are interested. Execs want to do it. The second thing they do is they spend a little time doing it themselves. So, Alison did a little bit of cybersecurity herself too, and a couple of other folks I know, just literally went into the office over the weekend and just started looking at what are the foundational things we should be doing. So you look at, for example, CISA's Small Business Cybersecurity Guide. It has the basic foundational top 10 things you could be doing. And I think a small business owner, less than 20 employees, can probably go through that over a couple of weekends. It's not that complicated, like enable MFA, update things, basic foundational stuff. So they do all of this, and then they develop an idea of what we're dealing with, And then they are ready to address the next high-level topics like vulnerability management or network monitoring and so on. And then they are able to have a lot more intelligent conversations with whoever they hire. That's really important. You want to be sure you're working with someone who really knows this stuff. Because if you don't know, then it's going to be hard for you to ascertain whether somebody selling their service is on point or not. So once you have done, got your hands dirty with this and you understand the complexity of your systems, you can keep all your consultants honest and at the same time pick the best option for yourself and get compliant with cybersecurity. The most important thing I would tell anybody is, the mandate or not, you want that peace of mind. Imagine you left your office unlocked and you went home every day. Would you be sleeping in peace? You probably wouldn't be, because somebody will walk right in, from burglar to local squirrel. So you got to treat cybersecurity the same way. We are being stolen from. Literally, defense information is being taken out of the DIB sector. And if a physical object was stolen from a DIB company, you would be there to see it and say, oh, it's missing, I better get security system. But in cyber, when they steal something, they just take a copy. They don't move the object. So you never know that you were stolen from. I mean, your files are still going to be there. And that's scary. And a lot of DIB companies are being hacked regularly. And even in stuff like, what was that? The Microsoft Exchange exploit, the companies showed up there too. So I would say definitely be engaged, do it yourself as much as you can, and then you're ready to bring in professionals and have somebody on your staff be dedicated to this. You're going to need to meet at least once a quarter to discuss how it went initially, how the implementation is going. And I would say, standard like CMMC maturity level 1 is fairly DIY friendly. And I think an in-house team can probably tackle it with some questions. And some of those questions can be clarified online. So this is all for your peace of mind, knowing that you're not going to get stolen from tomorrow. When it comes to compliance and CMMC, those things are still in the works and will come soon enough.
SteelRoot, a national leader in helping companies in the defense industrial base with CMMC preparation and federal cybersecurity regulations. Big or small, SteelRoot is here to help design, build, and manage IT. The SteelRoot reference architecture is a secure, cloud-native operating environment built on zero trust principles. SteelRoot also provides managed cybersecurity, IT, and virtual ISSO services. Visit steelroot.us for more information. That's very good. And I like how you refer to it back to like the physical, if the house was unlocked, if the business was unlocked, you wouldn't be sleeping well at night. You'd be thinking, oh my goodness, what's going on down there? Is somebody wandering around, taking files, taking things that, we need? So that's something that we need to think about too, is, if we look at it that way, it helps people kind of understand. And one thing else I wanted to comment too, is that getting the top dogs to buy into the whole program is definitely one of the biggest things. And then the next biggest thing is then the implementation, making sure that the boots on the ground, the people that are going to be actually, this is what you're supposed to do, that the implementation to the end users is successful, because you need both. You need to be able to, sell the guys at the top that you really need this. And then you need to be able to make sure that the implementation process goes smoothly so that it actually gets utilized. So
I mean, to take your point about the end user, and thank you for mentioning that, my corporate career, I've been an end user most of my career. So what do we do? When I was cyber uneducated, when I was on the other camp and I didn't understand any of this, we would try to make our lives easier, right? So if I had to access a system with zero trust, I'm probably going to have to use MFA like 3 times. If I'm working on zero trust environment from home, I'm going to use MFA to get into the machine, then get into VPN. Then I'm probably going to unlock every file locally as I use it. So what happens is users start to take shortcut. They're like, you got a kid crying here. You got to pick up the other kid from school. You're like, oh God, I need to finish this. The boss is on my head. Let me just copy it on my local iPad, which is so nice and smooth and slick. And this pizza box I got from work, I don't like that. So I'll work on my smooth, slick iPad, and voila, you're suddenly out of secure environment. And that's how you get vulnerable. And there are lots of horror stories around that. So end users have to be thought through. I think that's going to be the next battle. Is gearing up. End users start saying, hey, this is too much. Come on, I'm just writing a press release.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. So, but it's all in good time, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing next. Okay. Is the government doing enough to drive understanding and education around cybersecurity? I guess specifically for the DIB.
Yeah, well, when the DoD rolled on with CMMC, we had Miss Lord and Miss Arrington. They did a great job in driving awareness. And I think we all stood there and say, wow, I never had any idea that the federal government could do such a great job in communicating such cool concepts. But it kind of fell off. So that was a good steam. We used it. Katie helped us a lot in getting the word out. But we're not seeing that anymore. So in the DIB, it's a bit of a quiet, and that's not helpful. So we're sort of doing the stuff ourselves for now. Then you have larger agencies like CISA that is wholly responsible for securing critical infrastructure. And lo and behold, DIB is considered critical infrastructure, although by some federal regulation, the DoD oversees cybersecurity stuff. I think CISA needs to get involved with the DIB. I've also tried to bring CISA people in front of the DIB companies using another show I have, DIB Tech Talk. And I think CISA has tons of great content and connections they can use. At the moment, if I look at their social handles and I cheer for them all the time, it looks great. They're on point. They're producing infographics, PDFs, little things slicks that can tell you what you need to do as a small business owner to get going. But the problem is, it's one thing to create an asset. It's another thing for have the people view it. They are far apart. The general critical infrastructure industry isn't reading CISA's social media handles. They don't interact there. They may not even know it's there. Another data point you can look at is we had pipeline hack a few weeks ago. It's been a couple of months probably by this time. And at the same time, we just had the Iowa co-op hack like a couple of days ago. And what did we find? That was a critical infrastructure company. And we found out that they were using Chicken1 as a password. 10 employees had that password. There was no MFA. And the hackers probably didn't even need to use a script to get in. They probably guessed, oh, let me guess, Chicken1, boom, in. So that was the state of cyber hygiene for a critical infrastructure company. And that's the data point we have. And that's really concerning. If I were CISA, I'd be freaking out. I'd be like, okay, we got a lot of work to do right now.
Chicken1, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right, so what can we do as a culture to embrace stronger cyber hygiene?
Yeah, that's. I think that's where it comes down to eventually. The eventuality of all of our work we're doing, it will be a lot more amplified. If, for instance, we had the Hunt for Red October for cybersecurity, a compelling story where somebody's running away with cyber secrets and coming here, and then we have some A-listing Hollywood players in the movie. I think that could make a big difference. Black Mirror could probably, Netflix, that Black Mirror, the technology show, I bet they can do some stuff with cybersecurity. But overall, as a culture, we have a lot of gaps. My friend Leslie, who was on your show, coincidentally,
Yep.
She got her MBA from Cornell. And an interesting thing she shared is that nowhere in her curriculum was she ever required to take a course in cybersecurity. So it was an optional course. It was not a core curriculum. On the other hand, they were forced to do AI and data science, all the other fancy things that are happening there. It was required, but cybersecurity not. And Leslie said herself that, here we are creating the future leaders that will manage multi-billion-dollar organizations and don't have any understanding on information security. And that right there, to me, is a huge gap. So I don't blame, as I empathize with a standard DIB company, I don't blame anybody for lack of understanding of any of this, because guess what? We were never told.
That's exactly right.
And I got to know thanks to my work and thanks to folks like yourself, but I see myself very much closer to the DIB companies more so than cybersecurity pros, and I can see their perspective on why this is just feels like coming out of the blue and how complicated it is, and it's hard to make decisions on something like this when you don't even understand exactly what you're buying. And one of the best things about cybersecurity is, when there's no news, it's doing a good job. And that kind of is also, no update is also nerve-wracking a little bit. I imagine being a CISO in a board meeting and say, okay, any cyber updates? No, we had everything was good. Everything is awesome. But it was the same thing a year ago. Why did we spend 100 grand on this? So I feel for them. I feel for CISOs. I think they need to really think through how they pitch to the higher ups, like you said earlier too. How do we tell the higher ups in organizations, the board, that cyber is important? You can convince the CEO, but they may still need to convince the board. So, and if the board is making decisions based purely on ROI, then cyber is not an ROI thing. It's a risk management thing. It's like getting an alarm system and security stuff. So, I think it needs to be handled correctly, and overall the culture can certainly support what's happening to us. If you think of cybersecurity, if I was to use the analogy of kinetic war, And instead of cyber, everything that was happening to us was happening in real life. All of us, regular folks, would have bullets flying around our heads. In cyber equivalent world, that's crazy how crazy it is. Your stuff is stolen from large databases. You may not even know how many times somebody's trying to scan your ports to get in. You may not know how many accounts that should have been disabled are now active and doing stuff in your network. So it's all scary stuff, and truly you get to understand this, the severity of the problem once you put your head in the swimming pool, which is why I encourage folks to just DIY cybersecurity, start doing it yourself, learn what you're getting into, and understand the complexity of the problem. And you will also appreciate, how more technology increases complexity, but it simultaneously seems to increase the vulnerabilities that come with tech. So, and then maybe you would, be a much more informed buyer of technology too. You would ask your other consultants if they have cyber hygiene in place. You should absolutely start doing that. As soon as you're cyber strong, you want to start talking to your other consultants. Hey, are you keeping my information securely? What are your practices? We want to know. And that's where a standard really comes into play, because then it's no longer just a casual conversation. Then I know I can just work with a consultant who has CMMC ML1. If it's in the DIB sector or outside of the DIB, it could be some other standard that we can adopt. But
yeah. Well, that's good. That's very good. And third-party vendors, that's an area that people don't really think about sometimes. Maybe they're not even thinking about their own stuff. They're not even thinking about what's going on around here. Never mind what's going on there. But you're right. Once you get to be a situation where you're like, okay, we're gonna start paying attention and put some cyber hygiene practices in place, and then you're like, wait a minute, that company that we sent all that information to, what are they doing? So that is good. And then to actually find out how they're protecting it. It's coming. I think the cultural change is a very, very, very slow one. And I think, unfortunately, over the next, year and a half, 2 years, there's going to be a lot of bad stuff that's going to happen to a lot of small companies, and they're going to go out of business. And they don't think that they're what they have is of any value. So they say, well, why would somebody want to, hack into my system? I don't have anything that's that important. But then I always say to them, okay, you think that they don't need your stuff, but what about if you didn't have access to your stuff? You need access to all of your data and your files and your accounting and all that. So that's what you need to think about. It's not that they're, they want your stuff. Maybe they don't, but they know that you do. So they're going to go in there and put some kind of, ransomware, and then you're going to pay to get it back, or hopefully not pay to get it back. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. So
hopefully you never make it there. And, fun thing is, I think I forgot the study, but I think up to 80% of ransomware attacks exploit lack of MFA. So if you had MFA, already protect yourself. And Windows 10 has a built-in ransomware protection tool. You can find it in settings. It's out of box. So folks can install that on their local machines. Do all you can with your own hands to start understanding what security entails, and then you'll be ready to talk to a pro.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. The time has come, everyone.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very, very much for your time, Cy. I really appreciate all this awesome input that you gave us. And is there anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I would just say, encourage each other. If you do cyber stuff, this is going to spread. It has to spread organically. So as DIB companies start adopting cyber hygiene, encourage others to do the same around you, and that way we can get secure and recognize that this is never going to go away, and we're in it for the long haul. You have to address cybersecurity if you handle CUI or FCI.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you very, very much. We appreciate this, and we appreciate you putting your time and effort in here, and we appreciate everybody who's out there watching. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you on the next episode.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode is brought to you by A3, a CMMC cloud-based collaborative environment for an organization seeking certification, otherwise known as an OSC, to build CMMC packages and share with a marketplace of consultant RPOs and assessor C3PAOs.